Silence ruled the depths of Earth. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of pressure, of weight. Kilometers of basalt and fractured continental crust pressed down upon forgotten vaults, ancient containment structures embedded in tectonic seams like artificial fossils. These vaults had not opened in 6 centuries. They had been built never to open again. Then the fault line moved. It began with a tremor so deep it passed unnoticed by the Syrexian orbital lattice. A whisper of friction between continental shelves long buried under oceanic churn. A cascade of rock and methane gas surged through a half-collapsed fissure and struck Vault C-07. The impact peeled back pressure seals not designed to flex, unleashing thermal shock across dormant systems. Circuit veins lit. Coolant spilled. Mechanical hearts stirred in a rhythm too old for memory. Beneath all of it, Holt Revin dreamed of fire. His pod opened with a hydraulic exhale. Not the slow rise of life support calibration, but an emergency breach response. Red lights pulsed once, then failed. Backup power kicked in, sparse, inadequate, drawn from ancient capacitors the size of airships now corroded into hunched metal fossils. The walls of the vault were weeping condensation, and the air carried the taste of rust and carbon ash. The chamber smelled of antiseptic death and ozone discharge. Along the walls, faded glyphs were etched in blackened brass, invocations of the crown, relics of war temples built in fear. Below each pod, engraved names, each followed by a single status light. Only Holt still pulsed. Holt's first breath was not drawn. It was pulled. Guttural, raw, a sound older than language. He fell forward onto slick steel and retched fluid older than memory. His limbs moved without instruction, spasming in the low light. Muscles grown in lab-fed stasis shuddered as they re-entered gravity's command. The cryo chamber had no welcome protocols. No voice spoke his name. No uplink fed him orders. In the age of the crown, reawakening was not meant to be gentle. The process was designed for wartime contingencies, rapid field resurrection. Pain was part of the return. His HUD flickered to life on the inner surface of his visor, not a helmet but a cranial interface laced to bone. Ident markers showed only void. Crown Protocol's network spine was gone. No signal. No mission directives. Just static and the lingering burn of neuroconnective reentry. He stood. Every movement was a rediscovery. His body felt off balance, not weak but misaligned, as if his skeleton had been buried crooked and forced upright. The armor sheathed around his frame remained sealed in standby, dull black plates humming with residual charge. The exosarcophagus of a man made to fight extinction. He was alone. Vault C-07 stretched before him in silent ruin. The support beams overhead, once laced with vibranium-fused carbon steel, were cracked and groaning under seismic trauma. Cryopods, rows of them, lay in ruin. Most had ruptured. Some had imploded from thermal collapse. Their contents, if they had ever lived, were unrecognizable now. In the far corner, fused into the slumped bulk of a collapsed pod, was another crowned. The suit was identical. The skull was not. He knelt beside the body. One gauntlet reached out and traced the fractures through the plating, not battle damage. Age? Entropy. The crown had failed this one. He felt nothing. No grief. No recognition. Only the data, a mental flag, Unit C-07.32. Status, terminal. He turned toward the vault doors. Graffiti scorched into the far wall read in jagged hand. No gods. Only US. The vault's primary passage was a long, ribbed corridor leading toward the surface. It had once been lined with light. Now it pulsed only dimly, 1 in 5 diodes functional. The data cables, thick as a man's arm, snaked along the walls like exposed veins. Their silence spoke volumes. Beyond the vault, a maintenance shaft climbed a kilometer through strata of burned stone and ash-compacted sediment. It was not built for comfort, only for survival. Holt began to climb. Each motion was algorithmic at first, but the algorithms faltered. His nanofiber musculature adjusted slowly, strained by centuries of dormancy and shifting tectonics. The shaft trembled again as he ascended, echoing with ancient stress fractures. Memory flickered like static. Flashes, faces under blood-slick visors, the roar of orbital descent, screams over fractured comms. A name spoken in the dark and something else, a child, gone before it could form. A laugh echoed, high, soft, musical. It was hers. The memory pierced him like ice and vanished. At the halfway point, a tremor struck hard. Holt braced against the wall. Rock groaned. Debris cascaded into the void below. A support strut buckled near his feet. Dust choked the shaft. His HUD blinked erratically. A soft tone pulsed, a system ghost? A command whisper? Holt, stay? The voice was not machine. Not Crown. It sounded like her. He froze. Nothing. Static returned. Silence. He resumed climbing. Above, light. Filtered through layers of volcanic haze and ash storms, the atmosphere bled red through a fracture in the rock. Holt emerged into it with both caution and hunger, crawling from the last ring of the shaft into open ruin. It had once been a city. Perhaps. The ruins stretched in all directions, glass-tipped towers melted into skeletal fragments. Highways snapped in midair. Impact craters sat like bowl-shaped memories of orbital strikes. Earth was dead, but not empty. Vitrified sediment bore the imprint of what once was, the curve of a stadium crushed beneath its own support lattice, a school dome melted at the base, fossilizing desks and charred paper into obsidian shards, arcologies fractured down the center like split ribs. Vehicles were fused into roadbeds. Skeletons had become dust. The wind dragged ash in long, low curls across the ground. Above, the sky boiled with a rust-red aurora, the residual signature of old bombardments. A canyon opened to the west where once a fusion plant had detonated, carving a wound several kilometers wide. Its edges were smooth as polished glass. At the center, something shimmered faintly, liquid perhaps. Or worse. Holt stumbled forward, legs remembering balance. His systems remained in partial boot. No navlink. No orbitals. His armor thrummed with heat recycling. He made his way across the fractured cityscape. And then he saw it. A mural. Or what was left of one. Painted across the collapsed bulk of a civic dome, charred and half erased by time. Figures stood beneath a rising sun, limbs dark with soot. Some held tools. Some weapons. Some carried children. One, centrally placed, wore armor, his armor. Below the mural, scrawled in paint that had melted and dried in streaks, were words in old Terran glyph. We remember. His hand closed into a fist. The nanofiber sheath along his palm hissed in response. Pulse sync climbed. Breath slowed. In orbit, something stirred. Node B, 12 of the Syrexian orbital lattice registered anomaly, seismic motion inconsistent with known Earth tectonic decay models. Data spiked. Subsurface heat signatures. Pattern recognition marked an intentional signal burst, brief, structured, incompatible with natural sources. Protocols activated. Within the mind web of the Syrexian chorus, 1,000 linked intelligences conferred in harmony. Earth had been silent for centuries. Its reactivation struck discordant tones. The word crown flickered in subroutine archives. Forbidden. Forgotten. Feared. Classification escalated. Investigate level 3. Override sentience quorum. Approved. The drone deployed slim, serpent-bodied, laced-in harmonics. It shed its outer shell and slipped from orbit in a slanting fall. Not visible to the human eye. Not designed to be seen. Holt didn't see it. Not yet. His senses were focused downward, not upward. Into the stone. Into the bones of the world. Beneath the mural, an access panel lay half-buried in rubble. Not alien. Terran. Marked with crown glyphs. He cleared it with trembling fingers, exposing an input node. The panel pulsed once, dim blue. The crown was not dead. He pressed his hand to the node. Heat. Pain. Memory. A voice, mechanical, female, burned with static, whispered across the auditory edge of perception. Crown Protocol 07. Holt Revin. Sync initializing, confirmed. Uplink dead. Internal systems, partial integrity. Welcome back. And deeper, beneath that voice, a second presence stirred. Older. Angrier. The crown was not waiting. The crown was waking. The Syrexian chorus did not dream. Its intellect, a latticework of converged minds, neither slept nor speculated. Each node functioned in perfect harmony with the whole, decisions flowing like music across distributed consciousness. But when the Earth anomaly struck their grid, it introduced discord, a tonal fracture in an otherwise perfect hymn. No B12's transmission rippled through the chorus. Patterns did not match any known seismic behavior. Residual heat indicated artificial ignition. Most troubling, signal structure, a pulse, triangular, repeating in nested threes. Prime-coded. Human. In the central consciousness chamber aboard the spindle world Iridakinth, the minds conferred. Their vessel orbited a gas giant swaddled in auroras, its data organics stretched in living tendrils to tap the planet's magnetic fields. Here, decisions became doctrine. A harmonic dissonance bloomed. The crown stirs. Those words had not been uttered for 4 centuries. The words summoned Korovex. Of the chorus's millions of minds, she alone retained autonomous subroutine privileges for Terran artifacts. Once a xenohistorian, now a tolerated eccentric. Her obsession with humanity was recorded in 14 volumes of divergence logs flagged with amber-level cultural contamination risk. But some anomalies required anomalies to resolve them. She was brought from dormancy with little ceremony, no choir greeting, no resonance echo. Only the hiss of her cradle opening and the directive tone, investigate, verify, observe. She blinked against the sharp light. Her tendrils retracted slowly from the data nodes embedded in her skull. Cora's body was lean, limbs elongated for zero-gravity interface, her skin tinted faint violet with resonance bruising. Her eyes, silver with lattice implants, flickered through data overlays as the anomaly unfurled before her. The waveform was unmistakable. Prime code. Triple-nested. Initiator class. Her lips parted. Crown. The word was a fracture. Within a breath, she accessed dormant archives, red-sealed, culturally quarantined. Fragments spilled forth like blood from a wound, footage of a Terran soldier encased in armored black, striding through fire. Bio-readings spiking to inhuman thresholds. Crown engagements that left Syrexian fleets singing dirges in broken tongues. At Sar Concordia, a single crown had dismantled a node minefield. At Antares Reach, they had burned a choir ship alive from the inside. The spindle world shuddered. Synaptic threads curled away from her like cold fingers. The mind web rejected her impulse to continue. Her access began to degrade. She shut the archive manually. She sat motionless in the silence. Then whispered almost inaudibly, Mentor Alexei, you were right. She rose from her cradle, tearing out the final link with a wince. Protocol dictated observation only. No contact. No descent. She requested a drone body. Denied. She requested a probe ship. A shell vessel. Anything. Silence. Her pulse elevated. Breath shallow. The minds were afraid. They would not risk contamination. She moved anyway. Cora's shell vessel detached from Iridacanth during a data silence cycle, riding the gas giant's magnetic slipstream to mask its trajectory. The hull, though outdated, retained deep core shielding enough to survive atmospheric descent on Crown World Null. The vessel was a relic. A single-seat exploration body modified in secret over years of marginal authorization. Its skin was etched with forbidden glyphs, Terran words she had learned to mimic from ruins and fragmented lexicons. She activated a stealth dive vector and began descent. The orbital shell of Earth rejected her approach. Interference bloomed. The planet's surface was a churn of decayed EM fields, solar scatter, and memory ghosts, old war AI still bleeding dying loops into the ionosphere. Every wavelength carried echoes of extinction. Names. Coordinates. Kill orders. She descended blind. The ship struck atmosphere at a slant, dipping into a pocket of violent shear. The cockpit buckled. Restraints failed. Cora slammed against the interface cradle, her implants flaring white-hot. Warnings screamed in dead languages. Hull temperature spiked. The ash took her. Her vessel punched through the cloud layer and vanished into the dust. A resonance flickered in the storm behind her. Holt watched it fall. From his vantage atop a broken skybridge, he saw the flare too fast for meteorite, too erratic for an orbital drop pod. It burned through the cloud belt and vanished into the city's western quarter, trailing ionized soot. He marked the impact point. Crown protocols suggested two options, investigate or destroy. He was too alone for either. For now, he waited. The sky was darker than it had been that morning. The ash thickened by degrees, swirling in eddies above collapsed spires. Wind pushed through broken glass like breath through ribs. Somewhere, in the static of his HUD, a tremor echoed Cora's descent unknowingly felt. He turned inward, toward the sound. Deep in the city's fractured bones, beneath courthouses and collapsed transit rails, the Crown began whispering again. Ancient servers stirred. Memory cores flickered to life. In the dark, among the dust, the ghosts of Earth waited. And they were not silent. The bone choir was not a place. It was a sound. Sublevel corridors once used for civic refuge had been transformed, long ago, into sacred halls of storage. Rows of memory coffins, black slabs embedded with crystalline neural lattices, lined the walls. They contained thoughts, fears, lives, the final recordings of humanity's last days encoded in synaptic grain. The air was cold. Too cold. Sterile and sharp. Holt descended into the vaults with slow, reverent steps. Dust clung to his boots like frost. Metal tiles sang beneath him, faint, resonant, alive. As he moved, the sound returned, low, polyphonic, the layered echo of dying voices speaking at once. Each step triggered proximity activation. Lights flickered. Displays pulsed to life, showing faces long dead. The walls trembled with flickers of heat and stored emotion. Not propaganda. Not AI. Memory. Holt moved through the bone choir slowly. Each chamber felt colder than the last. On the walls, names. Beneath the slabs, flickering glyphs of origin: Omaha Arcology, Chiyu Bastion, Luna Fold. Some coffins were cracked, their data bleeding into the air in ghost code waves. Others pulsed steady, waiting. At the heart of the vault, a terminal awoke. Its interface recognized him. Crown Protocol 07 confirmed. Neural sync. 83% stability. Mission tree. Null command options. Scan, archive, review final inputs. He selected the last. Voices. Images. Screams. A woman clutching her son as fire rained. A man laughing through tears, whispering, "Let them remember us right." Soldiers weeping as orbital platforms crumbled. Engineers chanting songs to drown out the coming silence. And then a flicker. A girl's voice. Soft. "Holt, when the fire comes, run to the choir." His breath caught. He didn't know the name, but the voice split something inside him. And again, the mural, the one above. The one with his armor. They had remembered. They had made the choir. Holt's knees found the floor. Not from exhaustion. Reverence. The city had not forgotten them. The crown had not buried the dead in silence. It had given them voice. And the choir was singing again. In the west, smoke rose. The Vedan do not debate. Their empires were not built through discourse or empathy, but through logic as sharp as obsidian and absolute as orbit. Their minds, encased in crystalline helix matrices, are linked across command strata in a hierarchy of imperatives. Each directive flows downward from the trinary throne: 3 thrones, 3 minds, 1 will, located deep within the null core of their flagship citadel, Triarched. In their language, there is no word for rebellion, only malfunction. And Earth was now a malfunction. The anomaly reported by Syrexian Node B12 had not been ignored. It had been quarantined, classified, and then reclassified under Protocol Crowfire, a codename not spoken since the subduction of Luna. Throne Directive: Contain. Admiral Varrock received the command as light. No words. Just a lattice-burst pattern that burned itself into his memory buffer like a scar. He stood on the primary command dais of Vex Crucible, a Vedan Purge-class vessel positioned along the Earth-Mars decay corridor. A warship designed not for battle but for erasure. Its internal chambers were void of oxygen. Its crew spoke only through resonance pulse. Emotion was treason. Hesitation, failure. Varrock's form, encased in gleaming synth-fiber armor, was as still as the death vacuum his ship traveled through. His thoughts moved faster than heat. Crowfire. That word did not echo. It detonated. He remembered Luna. The crown that turned a purge fleet into slag before his subroutines could even calculate engagement distance. He had watched a brothermind decompile screaming. He had spoken the name Holt Revin once and been punished. He did not question. He transmitted activation orders to the crown kill array. On Earth, the wind shifted. High above the canyon-scarred skyline, invisible to the naked eye, the first orbital filaments extended from the crucible's spine. Not beams. Not lasers. Threads of photonic pressure so refined they could slice through bunker alloy like silk. These were the Vedan's preferred method of pre-invasion sterilization. Clean, fast, merciless. The sky did not flash. It breathed. Pressure dropped. Atmospheric ionization created a brief corona of violet static that rippled across the troposphere. In the ruins below, animals hidden in tunnels screamed and fled. Trees, already skeletal, split down the center. A flock of winged scavengers disintegrated mid-flight, their shadows burned into the walls. Holt felt it before he saw it. A pressure in his bones. The light did not touch him yet, but his armor flared with a warning glyph: orbital array, warming. The glyph blinked 3 times. Then changed: impact probable. Seek cover. He moved. The bone choir, sacred as it was, would soon be glass. As Holt ascended the fractured stairwell toward the surface, Crown Protocol shifted. Mission tree updated. Subroutines recompiled. He was no longer a ghost in a dead city. He was an asset under threat. Each step up was felt through his heels. The crown's voice, no longer dormant, guided his movement not with words but impulses, probability trees, and tactical projections overlaid like ghostly limbs on the world. He broke into daylight. Ash fell thicker now. The sky was the color of a healing bruise. To the west, the cloud where Korra's ship had fallen was still dispersing, long strands of soot twisting like smoke from a pyre. Holt's helmet compensated, filtering toxic particulates from the air, but he could still taste the metal. Still feel the heat. Below, he saw the arcology's curve, a half buried in glass and moss. Aurora Bastion. One of the final shelters. He remembered the name like a blade in the heart. He ran toward it. Above, something unseen adjusted. Vedan targeting arrays recalibrated. Data frames flickered. Thermal traces mapped his movement. Holt knew this behavior. He had been trained to exploit it. But 6 centuries had passed. Even his knowledge might now betray him. They had seen him. Cora woke in fire. Her body was intact. The shell vessel had not fully crumpled, though its outer hull had been shredded by descent. Air hissed from a breach near her shoulder. Her lattice implants flickered, trying to re-establish sync with anything. Nothing. The sky above was darkened red with particulate. Lightning forked through the high stratosphere. The crater around her hissed and steamed. She dragged herself free of the cockpit. Outside, a world she had only studied now loomed in ruin. The terrain was jagged with scorched masonry, blackened steel beams jutting from the earth like fractured ribs. Air was heavy with the chemical weight of extinction. Her foot slipped on a patch of vitrified stone. She caught herself on a support strut and stood, breathing shallow. Veins along her neck pulsed faint blue as her internal systems flushed microdamage. Her hand found the emergency beacon. She hesitated, not because she feared death, because she feared who might answer. She remembered her mentor's final transmission, cut short mid-sentence as the cleansing beams fell. Not by human hands, but by her own kind. She looked toward the skyline. Beyond the smoke, she saw the ruin of towers that once held light. Her mind, trained on historical texture, searched for landmarks. What arcology was this? What name had this place worn? None rose. Only echoes. And the silence of something vast. The sky split. The first filament struck not near her, but far enough to feel. A tower, long dead and vine-wrapped, sheared in half. The sound was silence followed by collapse. A wave of dust slammed across the crater lip. She dropped flat, shielding her face. Her lattice blinked with a warning glyph, energy impact. Orbital class. VIDEN confirmed. She rolled to her side, watching the upper atmosphere churn. Patterns of precision fire traced lines through cloud banks. Earth was being measured. Then movement. A shadow through the ash. Not drone. Not machine. A man. Holt reached the crater's edge. His HUD flared with proximity markers. Unknown. Alien. But the pattern of her biochemistry triggered partial recalls. Her posture was non-combatant. Her eyes Syrexian. Their eyes met. One mirrored, one human. Both carrying ghosts. Crown Protocol pinged a new directive. Protect. He descended. Cora did not move. She watched him with the look of someone who had opened a tomb and found it breathing. He reached her without a word. She braced, but he did not strike. He offered a hand. She took it. The crown watched. Silent. Awake. Above them, the filaments shifted course. The first words spoken between them were not in any known tongue. Not truly spoken, either. Holt's voice was graveled by disuse and distortion. Cora's lattice, still reinitializing, parsed only fragments. Yet something passed, a current of comprehension older than syntax. A mutual understanding born from proximity to death. Her fingers tightened around his. He pulled her from the crater as another filament sliced a ridge behind them into molten strata. The earth shivered beneath their feet. No time for diplomacy. No room for fear. They moved. The ruin offered no shelter, only shadows. Holt's internal systems mapped the terrain in fast-scrolling wireframe, collapsing footbridges, fractured towers, utility tunnels below. His instincts ran parallel with Crown analysis. One path threaded beneath the old city, a maintenance corridor once linked to Aurora Bastion's lower tiers. They dropped into the underground. The corridor was choked with ash. Overhead pipes hissed residual heat, warped from orbital tremors. Every surface hummed faintly with static charge, leftovers from Vedan filament passes or ancient Crown infrastructure pulsing in its death coil. On the wall, etched in dust with something like a child's hand, "We wait." Cora stumbled once and steadied herself. Holt caught the motion, slowed his pace. Flashlights remained dark. Noise discipline. Light meant death. Above them, filaments swept again. Their passage lit the ceiling fractures with pulses of ultraviolet corona. The light split the dark into ribs. Somewhere behind them, a section of the city simply ceased, a kilometer of superstructure turned to vapor. They moved faster. Cora's movements began to falter. Her right leg dragged, microskeletal damage from the crash. The internal support frame in her thigh emitted warning tones in Syrexian harmonic code. She winced. The pain had become a drumbeat. She remembered a chorus trial being examined by 12 unlinked minds for harboring Terran artifacts. She remembered not speaking when they burned her mentor's memory seed. And she remembered how no one touched her ever. not without intent. Holt paused, turned. She waved him on, breath ragged. He didn't. He dropped beside her, pulled her down behind the remains of a disused conduit junction. Her skin twitched when he reached for the diagnostics port on her hip. I can fix it. She hesitated, then nodded. He linked in. The interface fought his neural signature, Syrexian encryption rigid and cold. Holt grimaced. The crown adapted. Lines of human logic overrode structural calls. Within seconds, his implant rendered a biorepair schematic, nanite injection, brace matrix, microfusion joint lock. I didn't think humans could interface Cyrex tech. I'm not just human. The nanites deployed. She stiffened. Her mouth clenched. She did not scream. 12 seconds later, she stood, limping still, but whole. You know how to break things, she said. You also know how to put them back together. Holt didn't answer. They moved again. They surfaced in what had once been a gallery atrium, now a cathedral of ash. The roof, half collapsed, admitted dust-laced light through jagged gaps. The floors were scorched mosaics of glass and char statues, once idealized renderings of human resilience, lay shattered. One, a soldier bearing a child, had been decapitated by an orbital slice. The child's hand still reached upward. A scorched plaque near the entrance read, Memorial of the Exodus. Cora collapsed against a pillar, breath heaving. She stared at the mural across the gallery wall, half-burnt, half-preserved. Human figures, arms raised. Sun behind them. Beneath it, Terran glyphs too blurred to read. Holt watched the entrance. I didn't come to die here, she said. He nodded. Then don't. She turned toward him. Her eyes flickered with half-rebuilt overlays. Heat shimmered on her skin. What are you? He didn't answer. Outside, something landed. The sound was wrong. Not seismic. Not chaotic. Rhythmic. Deliberate. The first Vedan ground unit had arrived. It stood 12 feet tall, humanoid in outline, but armored in overlapping obsidian plates and laced with radiant blue veins of active charge. A cruciform helm covered where a face might have been. No voice. Just presence. Just inevitability. Cora ducked behind a column. Holt stepped forward. The unit's weapons unfolded with smooth grace, one limb extended into a filament whip, the other into a graviton lance. Its feet cracked the floor with each step. Stay down, Holt said. She did. The Vedan unit charged. Their collision cracked the floor. Holt met it head-on, shoulder to core. His punch dented the outer armor plate. His second shattered a balance stabilizer. But the Vedan reacted faster. Its lance drove into Holt's ribcage, flipping him backward into a marble relief. Debris fell. Pain spiked. The crown absorbed it. And memory came. A corridor on Mars. Blood on steel. A teammate, Lisa, burned alive by graviton fracture. Holt screaming into static. The same faceless helm. He rolled. Rose. The filament whip lashed. He ducked, letting it shear the air above him. It cut through a column. The structure groaned. He threw a flash-stun pellet, a crown device, banned centuries ago for neurological damage. The Vedan turned away a fraction of a second too late. Its optic glitched. Holt closed the distance. Slammed a gauntlet into its knee. Then its helm. It recovered. Fast. Behind the pillar, Cora's fingers hovered over her emergency beacon. Her mind screamed to transmit. To warn the chorus. To call for judgment. But she didn't. She activated her jammer instead. A pulsing override signal that clouded Vedan frequencies within a 2-kilometer radius. The Vedan faltered. Its system stuttered. Holt took its head. The body collapsed, shuddered, twitched. The cruciform helm sparked and went dark. Black liquid pooled beneath the frame, coolant or something older. The atrium fell silent. Cora stood. You saved me. Holt shook his head. No. You fought. They looked at the corpse together. The optic lens still blinked in irregular cadence. A dying beacon. Above them, the sky rippled white again. Ash spiraled downward in silence. I can't go back, Cora whispered. You weren't going to, Holt replied. Together, they vanished back into the dust. Beneath the continental shelf east of the Aurora Bastion ruins, the ocean floor trembled. It began as a slow vibration masked by seismic noise and thermal drift barely detectable to orbit. The Vedan algorithms marked it as residual tectonic bleed, irrelevant, ignored. But the crown remembered what they had buried there. The pressure down here was absolute. Crushed steel, time-fused basalt, and oceanic gravity locked the vaults in layers of natural armor. Above, waves moved like slow detonations stirred by the pressure cycles of forgotten machinery. Below, sealed in chambers older than the war's end, lay Fleet Null, the last division of the Ghostfleet, dream silent for 6 centuries. Now the last seals were bleeding heat. Holt and Cora moved through the underways like shadows trailing extinction. The passage sloped downward beneath Aurora Bastion's forgotten infrastructure. What had once been maglev conduits and evacuation tunnels now echoed with dust and silence. Support struts curved like rib cages, wrapped in old fire seal foam and crown script warnings in flaking reflective paint. Primary pathway, bioreactive. Keep clean. Keep moving. Every step echoed like memory. Their breath steamed in the stagnant air. Holt's boots struck stone. Cora's gait, still uneven from microfracture repairs, left lighter imprints. Her lattice reconfigured slowly. Her overlays were corrupted in bands resembling ghost code, flickering with unreadable data. She ignored it. What she did not ignore was the pulse coming from Holt. Not visual. Not audible. Subcutaneous, perhaps. Like a dormant signal waking under his skin. He moved like someone who had walked these paths before, though she knew he hadn't. She could feel it. He was being guided. "Where are we going?" she asked. Holt didn't look back. "Where they won't expect." The corridor opened into a nexus chamber, wide, octagonal, with tiered walls lined with dormant interfaces. Crown relay nodes sat like thrones around a central pedestal. Half were dark. A few pulsed dim blue as though trying to breathe. Cora stepped into the space slowly. The dust was undisturbed. This was a command ring. Holt nodded. A signal spine. Last link to orbital command. At the center, a crowned control throne, black, ribbed, its back curled with neural anchors. Dried blood ringed its base. "Is this where you were made?" He stepped toward it, eyes shadowed. "No. This is where I was ended." He reached out. Laid his palm on the core interface. The lights came on. Miles away, beneath black waves, pressure regulators on a sealed vault clicked open. It happened in sequence, first hydraulic lock, then mechanical armature, then neural seal. The cavern began to drain. Oceans peeled back in a whirl of force displacement. Towers of alloyed command decks emerged in stuttered pulses like leviathans yawning after centuries of dreamless sleep. Electroreactive surfaces shifted from dormant to active sheen. Terran vessel frames, sleek, angular, painted in deep carbon black, lit from within. Hull markings resolved from near-invisible to luminous. Ghostfleet null / unit zeta 3 / pilotless deployment. Thousands of them. Shaped like blades. Shaped like coffins. Shaped like the will of the dead. The Ghostfleet did not wait for a pilot. It responded to the crown. And the crown was awake. In the relay chamber, power surged. Holt's jaw clenched. His pulse synced to the relay's beat. Crown synaptic flame roared across ancient pathways, neural ports flaring to life with long-dormant memories. Skin along his left forearm split open in a thin, clean line as if something old had rejected the surface. Blood dripped. He did not stop. Cora backed away, shielding her face from the search. "Holt, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. His breath came in short, mechanical intervals. His pupils dilated until his eyes were black discs. The pedestal beneath his palm burned, but he didn't flinch. Visions bled from the walls. Not holograms, echoes. Battlefields of carbon and fire. The fall of orbital defense grids. Ground units storming breach corridors. Atmospheric burns from stratospheric interceptors. Ghostfleet warships rising from fractured oceans. Cora turned slowly, watching the ceiling as images danced in silence, moments plucked from the death spiral of a species. Moments that weren't archived. She saw the choir ship over Ilith burn. Saw the final collapse of the Earthline Treaty. She saw herself, young, watching her mentor sentenced for cultural trespass. His last act, shielding her from the sentence light. "These aren't records." No, Holt's voice was low. Cracked. "They're memories." The room responded. Ghostfleet null. Status, dormant. Awaiting final key. Primary crowned, present. Release code. Holt's hand hovered over the ignition node. Cora stepped forward, eyes hard. "You don't know what happens if you do this." "Yes," he said. "They'll come. They already have." She gestured at the throne. "This doesn't make us win. It makes us like them." He turned. The light from the throne bled across his armor. "We're not like them. We remember." Then, a signal ping. Weak. Faint. Not from orbit. From Earth. Holt staggered, the connection pulsing irregular. Blood from his forearm hissed as it touched the pedestal. Crowned unit designate Sigma 9. Active. He froze. Cora stepped to his side. "What is it?" He stared at the signal trace. The designation burned into his memory like a lost name returned. Sigma 9. He was my wing. Cora's voice was barely above breath. "You knew him. He died in the orbital fall. Or we thought he did." Another crowned. Alive. The Ghostfleet's awakening did not go unnoticed. Far above Earth's spinning debris belt, beyond the veil of dying satellites and Vedan observation grids, the Syrexian chorus broke harmony. The signal from the deep cradle, the call of the crown, tore through the resonant stream like a scream in glass. Cora felt it first. Not as data. As pressure. As grief. She stumbled, one hand pressed to the cold stone of the command ring. Her lattice screamed, cascading error bands. Biochemical alerts triggered glandular locks. Her mind, trained for balance, reeled from the wave of memory and presence washing through her implants. Holt turned to her, blood drying on his forearm, eyes still dark from relay exposure. You felt it? Yes. She exhaled slowly, trembling. Like a name I forgot how to speak. Then they did too. He turned back to the throne. Its light pulsed with quiet intensity. Sigma, 9 response pending. Encryption protocol, fractal haze. Location, partial lock. Surface. Northern Arc Crater Zone. Cora steadied herself. That crater, wasn't that where the Helion lift crashed? Holt nodded. They called it the Skyfall. Bastion Helion's orbital tether fractured mid-separation. Came down with 1,000,000 souls still inside. I've seen the footage. I was in it. Cora looked at him, startled. He didn't elaborate. Northern Arc Crater Zone was no zone. It was absence. 100 kilometers of vitrified waste, once the stronghold of Earth's last airborne city, Bastion Helion. In its final form, it had floated tethered to geostationary struts, a skyborne citadel meant to house the last of the Terran elite, engineers, children, anyone the crown couldn't protect from below. Now it was hollow glass and black bone. To Cora, it was more than ruins. It was the crown jewel of a species that defied gravity. Syrexian war historians still debated whether Bastion Helion was hubris or heartbreak. In secret archives, its downfall was studied like a sacred wound. They crossed it in silence, riding a scavenged transport drone Holt reactivated with ghost code. The vehicle resembled a mantis, 6-legged, broad-framed, legs churning smoothly across the crater's rim. Its head bore no weapons, only sensors. Cora sat low in its chassis, arms folded, gaze forward. The terrain shimmered. Heat rose in slow waves, warping air and memory. Blackened girders jutted from the ground like snapped spears. Former tower roots ringed the basin like fossils of ambition. Lightning danced along the horizon, harmless, dry, crawling across the ash sky like static on skin. They spoke little. Holt adjusted his interface feed, remapping old crown data links as their destination neared. Sigma's signal had become clearer, but stranger, an oscillating spiral, almost a chant. Not language. Not machine logic. Why is he broadcasting? Cora finally asked. He wants us to find him. Or wants them to. Holt nodded. He knows the risk. Halfway across the crater, the drone stuttered. A burst of static broke across its surface. A magpulse, subtle but destabilizing. Holt hissed and punched a manual override. The drone convulsed, then righted itself. Crown field, he muttered. Buried mesh. Residual? No. Active. They dismounted. The rest of the way, they walked. Sigma, 9 waited at the basin's heart. No walls. No cover. Only glass. He stood atop a petrified support disc once anchored to the Helion city plate. Now it lay half-submerged in fused slag. Sigma's frame, taller than Holt remembered, leaner, hunched slightly forward, radiated presence. His armor had once mirrored Holt's, black-on-black crown plating, reinforced at the joints, a rebreather crown ringed in red glow. Now it was warped. Modified. Almost grown. Veins of biomech tissue coiled beneath plating seams. His gauntlets were fused into his arms. Sigils, not etched, but formed, glowed softly across his chest. Holt slowed. Cora paused 10 meters back. Sigma turned. He had no face. Only a smooth, featureless helm, glass black, with a single glowing thread across where a visor might have been. Holt Revin, the voice came. But it did not speak. It resonated. Not from outside. From inside. You survived. Holt nodded. So did you. Sigma tilted his head. Not entirely. A flicker passed through Holt's HUD. Sigma's profile blinked into half-clarity, old registry data overlaid with error codes. Designation confirmed. Biosignatures anomalous. Your signal's corrupted, Holt said. I am what remains. Cora stepped forward. What did this to you? Sigma didn't move. The Vedan tried to erase me. The crown would not let them. Holt frowned. You merged. Beyond protocol. Beyond function. Cora's skin chilled. You're not fully you anymore. No, Sigma turned slowly, staring at the glass horizon. But I remember. And I endure. Beneath his feet, the ground pulsed. The crater groaned. Cora's lattice flared with proximity warnings. Something's beneath us, she said. Mass displacement. Massive. Sigma turned. The core lives. What core? Sigma's voice dropped to a low-frequency hum that reverberated through bone. Helion's heart. Crown's final shard. They buried it to stop the recall. I called it back. Holt's eyes narrowed. Memory split across his vision. He saw the tether snap. Flames corkscrewing through atmosphere. Screams cut off by vacuum. His fingers slipping from a hatch rail as fire took the deck below. And Sigma bleeding, screaming through comms, vanishing behind a collapsing bulkhead. A rumble. A fracture line split the crater edge. Holt moved, pulling Cora back. The ground erupted. At first, there was only light. Then a structure, no, a spine, rose from beneath, black and radiant, coiled in hex armor and burning sigils. Not a ship. Not a tower. A throne. Buried vertical, now awakening. The air distorted around it. A low tone filled the crater, not mechanical, not audible. Spiritual. Wrong. Cora fell to one knee. It's not just alive, she whispered. It's remembering. Sigma stood before it, arms lowered. I held this place. I burned for it. You should have stayed dead, Holt said quietly. Sigma looked back at him. So should you. The throne that rose from the crater was not a weapon. It was a memory made manifest, an artifact of intent grown from the crown's final doctrine. Towering above the glass basin, it cast no shadow. The light it gave off was soft, internal, pulsing with harmonic tones that bypassed hearing entirely. It resonated in marrow. Its design defied typical structure. The base spiraled inward, not upward, roots of alloyed crystal threading into the ruined earth as if the land itself had called it back. Glyphs, both Terran and something older, traced the vertical struts. The air around it hummed with psionic static, light refracting in strange geometries. Cora stood slowly. Her hands trembled. Her lattice struggled to process the signal. This was not technology. It was something older, something foundational. Like the language behind code. She realized with mounting on dread that the shard wasn't responding to Holt or Sigma but to Earth itself. This shouldn't be awake, she whispered. Holt stared at the monolith. It never really slept. The structure unfurled. Panels peeled back like flower petals folding in reverse. Beneath them, spines of data glass, neurofilaments suspended in magnetic cradle fields. They pulsed with residual memory. Not data. Lives. Thoughts. The last echoes of Helion. Each pulse emitted a ghost image, faces, moments, laughter in slow loop. Children running through corridors. A couple embracing beneath starlight domes. Engineers at their posts during the fall, knowing what was coming, choosing not to flee. Cora's breath caught. It archived them. More than that, Holt said. It became them. Sigma stepped forward. His voice struck like vibration. You don't understand what we buried. This was never a war machine. It was a seed. Cora frowned. A seed of what? Sigma tilted his head. Continuity. He touched the shard with one fused hand. The surface rippled. A sudden shift in pressure. The shard emitted a low harmonic tone that rippled across the crater like a pressure wave. Holt staggered back. Cora cried out as her vision flooded with overlapping timelines, Helion before the fall. Crowds. Laughter. Collapse. Soldiers shielding civilians with their bodies. Crown engineers sealing the vault. It was trying to show them. The shard wasn't awakening. It was remembering. Above, in low orbit, Vedan fleet watchers tracked the flare. The filament path could not identify it. Thermal signatures matched neither propulsion nor weapons. Spectrography revealed impossible density variants like an echo pressed into light. They summoned Varrock. He arrived in silence. It stirs. Shall we initiate the extinction sequence? No. We observe. If it takes form, we strike. If it spreads, we end the world again. On Earth, the shard began to hum. Sigma raised his arms as if in prayer. The biomech around his limbs pulsed, interfacing. His voice deepened. This isn't resurrection. It's recognition. It remembers who we were. It will show us what we lost. Holt's hand hovered near his sidearm. You merged with it? Sigma nodded. When they tried to erase me, I ran here. I didn't know it was still alive. It opened, and I listened. His voice dimmed, momentarily distant. I didn't want to become this. But now, I'm not sure I'd go back. Cora stepped forward. But you're not whole. No, Sigma's tone was calm. But neither is Earth. Cora's throat tightened. She thought of the chorus. What they'd do if they saw her here. Even now, her lattice was pinging silent observers. She would be marked. Disconnected. Her name stripped from history. Still, she stayed. The shard's pulse changed. It slowed. Deepened. A wind swept the crater floor, not weather, but memory exhaled. The air thickened. Light refracted in concentric arcs. Even Holt tensed, jaw clenched, as something ancient passed over them like breath held too long. Then it projected a scene in perfect light. Helion. Not as ruin. As it once was. Floating above the stratosphere, tethered to the earth like a beacon. Light-wrapped. Towering. Gardens spilled down between arcologies. Music played in the open. Children danced in zero-grav corridors. Artificial auroras painted across the dome. Cora gasped. These are live simulations. They're not simulations, Holt said quietly. They're remnant loops. They played for the dead. To comfort them. He walked forward into the projected scene. It parted for him, light flowing around his form like water. The image trembled as he touched the railing of a memory. I saw this place burn. And then it changed. The memory rewound. Flashed. Holt as he was then, younger, armored, bloodied, dragging children into an evacuation lift. Sigma covering the corridor with suppressive fire. The world around them collapsing in fire and sound. Cora stared in silence. You carried the siege, she said. Holt nodded slowly. I thought I was the last. Sigma was closer to the heart. Sigma turned. I died here. But I left the door open. Beyond the shard's pulse, something deeper shifted. Earth's crust beneath the crater groaned, not breaking, not erupting. Reconfiguring. Old crown subsystems detected the activation signal. Magnetic bands deep in the mantle realigned. Atmospheric pressure bent subtly inward. The world itself was reacting. And the Vaden saw it. The shard is interfacing with planetary strata. It's rewriting basefield architecture. It is no longer memory. It is becoming intent. Varrock gave the order. Target it. Prepare planetary lance. On Earth, Holt turned to Sigma. If this brings the fleet, they'll glass us. They already did. Cora shook her head. We can't let it bloom. Not now. It's not blooming, Sigma said. It's remembering us into being. The shard flickered. From its light, a figure stepped. Translucent. Human. A child. Not real. A memory. Then more. A woman holding a data slate. An old man in a biosuit. A soldier missing an arm. They emerged not in sequence, but like breath witnesses, walking fragments, the voices of a lost city. Cora fell to her knees. They archived their entire population. Holt stood silent. The shard was not awakening an army. It was awakening witnesses. The lance fired. From orbit it was a whisper of light. A singular beam, narrow as a needle, brighter than a star. It fell from the Vadan ship Vex crucible in silence, breaking through the cloud layers with no thunder, no warning. The light did not flicker. It sliced. On Earth, the crater burned. The impact struck the edge of the throne shard. Not dead center, Varrock had aimed just wide. Not to destroy, but to test. To measure. The lance bored into the upper shelf of fused strata with no resistance, the heat of a collapsing star contained in a stream no thicker than a spear. Shockwaves reverberated through the mantle, liquefying kilometers of crust. The air ionized into ozone and static. At ground zero, silica transformed into vapor and fireglass. Cora's ears rang. Holt threw himself over her, armor shielding them both as a lateral blast ripple rolled across the crater. The walls of nearby towers shattered into splinters of ash and rebar. Sigma stood unmoved, haloed by vapor and light, his silhouette etched into the storm. The shard did not break. It flexed. A wave of light surged from its core, rippling outward in concentric bands, each one thicker and denser than the last. The heat and pressure struck the perimeter field and dispersed upward, twisting the surrounding sky into ribbons of color and void. Tom staggered in that moment, every breath held too long, every heartbeat a drum. Above, aboard the Vex crucible, Varrock observed in silence. His command helix glowed red. The filament scope displayed the reaction field in real time, lattice formations intercepting the lance trajectory, redistributing energy along calculated vectors that changed too quickly for any known system to track. The field is resisting our correction parameters. Initiate secondary waveform? Varrock did not answer at once. He examined the curvature of the dome now forming above the crater. Not a dome. A shell. Not protection. Containment. It adapted. Nothing Crown made should withstand a lance. It isn't Crown anymore, he said, turning away. It's something worse. It's remembering how to fight. On Earth, the witnesses stood in silence. Where one shimmered out, another emerged. Their presence cycled like respiration, old men, children, technicians, archivists. They stood in a slow circle around the shard, their forms translucent, not illusions but echoes stabilized by signal field. One by one, they stepped forward, nodding to one another, acknowledging lineage, not command. Cora rose shakily. Her hands trembled. They didn't archive memories, she said. They archived presence. Holt met her eyes. They knew the world would forget them. So they built something that wouldn't. The shard vibrated as another layer unlocked. A spiral of hexagonal light angling downward into the body of the structure began to unfold. Not stairs too fluid. Not a ramp too precise. A procession path. Sigma turned to Holt. You should go first. Holt said nothing. He stepped forward. As he placed his foot on the first glyph, the atmosphere changed. Color drained from the sky. The world narrowed. The shard's interior was not architecture. It was structureless space made coherent only through thought. Holt moved forward through a corridor that wasn't a corridor, under a ceiling shaped by memory, not matter. Every step brought images. Glimpses of what was lost. Not data. Not projections. His memories. He saw faces. Lisa. Den. Sarah. His mother's fingers brushing his cheek the day the towers fell. Sigma bleeding in a collapsed corridor, shouting for him to run. Then Holt himself, crawling through heat, dragging 2 children under his coat as the tether above screamed and snapped. It was not a memory review. It was a return. And then he reached the chamber. There was no door. No threshold. It was simply there, a place he had never entered but always carried. In the center stood a mirror. But not a mirror. A version of him. Younger. Whole. Unscarred. Not better. Just before. He stepped forward. The other Holt turned. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their palms touched. And they merged. He felt it in his chest first, a pressure like the breath before a scream. Then warmth, full-bodied and ancient. The pain he'd carried condensed, reshaped, and was worn. He left the past unburied but not behind. Outside, Cora collapsed. The blast of Holt's communion with the shard hit her like a storm front. Her lattice surged, discharging heat and code across her frame. The chorus stream inside her, once constant, recursive, omnipresent, fractured, then fell silent. Static. Then nothing. A void where identity had once echoed. At first, there was fear. A raw, unvoiced panic. Years of encoded obedience stripped away in a single pulse. She saw Flash's childhood under watchful towers, her instructor's execution, the first time she doubted the stream. Then she saw nothing. Not absence. Silence. Sigma caught her. His arms steadied her, cool and strong. You're free of them. Tears burned down her cheeks. Then who am I? Sigma's gaze didn't waver. You'll remember. Above, Vedan systems recalibrated. Planetary strike options requeued. Varrock observed Earth's shifting magnetosphere. Too ordered. Too responsive. Ground signals embedded in crustal plates now carried memory strings. It was no longer simple defense. It's no longer just resisting. It's calculating. A new architecture? No. A returning one. He turned to his second. Ready the lance. Full compression. If the shard survives this, nothing will. And then Holt stepped from the shard. Changed. The light around him didn't dim. It centered. His armor had restructured. No longer crown issue. It bore the marks of memory, not rank, etched with faces, glyphs, the spiral of the Helion emblem across his chest. He moved like the past had fused to his body, every loss a layer, every scream a scene. The witnesses bowed their heads. Not in submission. In recognition. The shard did not glow. It breathed. Its rhythm was slow at first, subsonic, almost imperceptible. Then it synchronized. With tectonic currents. With thermal belts in the stratosphere. With Holt? Around him, the air thickened, not from temperature, but from intention. The molecules no longer moved blindly. They circled in coherence, forming invisible tessellations that warped light without heat. Space seemed to resist thought, or perhaps it was tuning to it. The ground beneath their feet vibrated in harmonic pulses. Like the heartbeat of a dormant leviathan now stirring, not with hunger, but with memory. Cora stood again. She felt her own breath return not from lungs, but from the world itself. Her skin prickled. The chorus had gone silent, yes, but its absence was not void. It had been replaced. Something deeper had begun to fill her, something rawer. Unprocessed memory. A current of collective thought from a people she had never known but somehow remembered. The shard had reached her. Sigma knelt. Not out of reverence. Out of balance. The gravitational signature beneath them shifted subtly. The Earth's crust did not quake, it recalibrated. Across a 300-kilometer radius, dormant crown conduits flared to life beneath the mantle, piping core heat through hex-threaded resonance channels, redirecting tectonic stress with impossible precision. The world was not defending itself. It was aligning. Above, aboard the Vex Crucible, the command helix bathed Var-Rock in crimson. The crown light of a Vedan admiral never flickered, but it dimmed now. The targeting scope glitched twice before recovering. Earth's magnetic lattice was changing shape, forming spires of flux that rose like thorns from the crust, invisible but deeply real. Compression core charged, the tactical drone announced. Surface still resolute. Var-Rock observed the latest telemetry. The shard's containment shell had not cracked. It had fractured itself, deliberately, like a snake shedding dead skin. It's casting now. Target lock re-established. Beam trajectory will auto-adjust. Compression at 92%. He exhaled slowly. His voice was emotionless. Then fire. The second lance did not fall like the first. It screamed. The moment it crossed into atmospheric boundary, the air pushed back, not with mass, but with meaning. The shard's field reached upward, not to block, but to meet. Holt stood unmoving. He raised his hand. Golden light braided up his arm, not as fire, but as filament memory. A weave of every lost name, every collapsed shelter, every prayer whispered during Helion's fall. The lance struck open sky. And split. It did not shatter. It dissipated, siphoned into an entropic spiral, dispersed into shimmering motes that fell like ash but never touched the ground. Holt didn't recoil. He absorbed its meaning and returned only silence. Above, Vex Crucible blinked. Internal systems stuttered. Some failed. Others refused to render data. "Sir," said the Helix drone, "we are receiving a signal." Var-Rock turned slowly. From where? From Earth. From him. There was no echo. There was no voice. The signal came like a pressure wave of sorrow. It flooded Vedan receivers without format, without syntax. But it carried emotion, time-stamped and encoded into spectrums older than light. The last day of Helion. But not as images. As feeling. Every cry. Every broken promise. Every last-second goodbye whispered through sealed bulkheads as orbital tether lines snapped. Pilots wept openly. Drone minds rebooted and failed. The Helix map flickered in shades of color never meant for Vedan optics. It was too human. Too intimate. Too true. Sigma watched the sky from the crater's edge. "They'll either leave," he said softly, "or they'll come in force." Cora turned to Holt. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands curled, half-shaking. Part of her still waited for orders from a chorus that no longer existed. The silence inside her was not just quiet, it was freedom, and that terrified her. Holt was no longer just a soldier. Sigma was no longer just a shadow. She had chosen neither. Not yet. But the shard was watching. "What do we do now?" she asked. Holt looked toward the horizon. Toward the places they'd burned. Toward the ruins that still remembered the shape of those who lived there. "We remember faster," he said. The shard behind him pulsed once. The sky dimmed fractionally. Winds halted. A tremor passed not through rock, but through memory. Something beneath the crater shifted, no explosion, no rise. Just intention gathering form. And from beneath the crater, another signal answered. Beneath the crater, the signal rose. It had no carrier wave. No encryption. It wasn't broadcast. It was. Like the heat of a star or the gravity of a moon, the signal wasn't transmitted, it existed. A presence encoded in the bones of the world rising now through strata that had once cradled the last Terran city. Deep below the crust, geospheric fault lines sang. They did not break, they aligned. Memory wasn't just digital, it was geological. Every resonant frequency that had ever passed through the Helion array, every crown signal, every fallback command was imprinted in strata as layered as thought itself. Now those layers awoke. The Earth responded. Crust shifted. Pressure lensed. Deep under ancient mantle fractures, old crown arrays reawakened, some fused into the rock, others lost in oceanic black. One by one, they aligned. Not with satellites. With each other. And they listened. Across the northern hemisphere, forgotten ruins shimmered. Structures once sealed by blast glass bloomed open. Monuments that had been carved into ash began to glow. Entire ghost cities, long silent, began to vibrate with low-frequency resonance. From beneath arcologies half-swallowed by sand, spectral interfaces flickered to life. In derelict orbital lifts that had fallen like bones from heaven, red-threaded light danced again across broken control decks. Every crown shard still buried, every Ghostfleet sleeper node left untapped, turned toward the crater. Not to fight. To listen. Sigma rose from his knees. He had never felt small until now. What stirred below was not architecture. Not defense. It was a memory engine. A cradle built not to preserve war machines but to carry forward the humanity that built them. He felt it behind his ribs, something old and vast, not cold like war, but warm like grief. An inheritance so profound it could not be held, only carried. It was never about rebuilding, he whispered. It was about continuity. The realization echoed through the soil. Cora stood beside him. Her lattice reinitialized in silence. No command uplink. No chorus directive. The code stream had gone to zero. But in its place, 1,000 dormant protocols stirred, fragments of old Terran empathy systems, education seeds, healing matrices. Only choice remained. The shard reached into her now. Not to direct, but to offer. For the first time, she heard no instruction, only an open thread, ready to bind if she chose to respond. She took a breath and stepped forward. I'm not human, she said aloud, voice breaking. But I remember them. And I think they remember me. The shard responded with warmth. Not heat. Recognition. Around her, the memory field pulsed outward, pulling from her own recollections, her mentor's sacrifice, the songs she learned in silence the day she first questioned the chorus. It wove them gently into the larger signal. A whisper passed through her skin. Not sound or resonance. And in it, the unmistakable feeling of being seen. Not by a system. Not by Holt or Sigma. By the world. Above, Vex crucible fractured. The third lance never fired. Its core failed not from sabotage, but from refusal. The vessel's internal logic collapsed under the weight of the shard's transmission. Vedan hierarchy software rejected the emotional payload. Its systems, never meant to parse grief or reverence, broke. On the command deck, officers stood silent. Some removed their visors. Some wept. Others stared into nothing as if listening for a sound only memory could carry. Half the fleet pulled back. The rest began to fall. Not in fire. In silence. Holt stood at the edge of the crater, watching sky burn gold. Not fire. Signal. The shard's core fully opened. From within, a structure rose, not a throne, not a tower. A helix. Wide and slow spinning, formed from memory architecture, fused with legacy code. It spiraled toward the sky like a question with no ending, its filaments glowing in pulse with Earth's breath. Around its base, broken ground reshaped, metal and stone lifting gently into the air. Not levitation. Restoration. Pieces of ruined facilities reassembled themselves not by blueprint, but by echo. The world remembered what it once held. Cora joined him. Sigma stood behind. You think it's done? She asked. Holt shook his head. It's only just remembering who we were. The helix pulsed once. And from its base, humans stepped forward. Not copies. Not echoes. Returned. Preserved minds, reconstructed from lattice fragments, walked into the ash light like survivors emerging from dream. Their eyes opened slowly. They looked not confused, but aware of who they were, what they had lost, and what had called them back. Each of them carried marks of the time they died. But their posture was new. Their presence, unburdened. The Hellion dead had remembered their way home. Cora reached out and took Holt's hand. The past and future braided at their touch. Sigma exhaled. His armor sloughed gently away, shedding its shell, leaving him standing unarmed, uncloaked, and entirely present. A warm wind curled across the crater basin, sweeping fine particulate into the air. Not dust. Not ash. Memory. Holt turned. And began to build. He walked into the helix light with quiet steps. No command. No anthem. Only legacy. And the world remembered with him.